All right, well, it's time for the story of all ages, and since I already singled you guys out once, I won't make you come up front. But we're going to be talking about something today. Have you guys heard the term coexistence before? It's like we've got this nifty little bumper sticker, and we're going to toss around a couple of these different terms today: coexistence and interfaith and interdenominational. But none of that really matters. What really matters is ice cream. Okay? And I want you guys to treat today's service as an excuse to go eat ice cream every Sunday. And if you need defense for your family, I'm going to give it to you right now. So this is your argument to go. Is there a wrong flavor of ice cream?
Yes.
Yes? You got a yes? You have to defend your answer now. What is it?
There's certain flavors, forget it, no bubblegum ice cream.
It's licorice. Yeah, pistachio is a little bad. I know, my dad was always into rum raisin.
Garlic, but not as ice cream. The garlic festival enough times, that is nasty. And no liver.
Well, you guys are actually proving my point perfectly. The coolest thing about an ice cream shop is that I can go and order my Rocky Road, which is the best flavor, and I can go next to you who orders the pistachio, even though that's a wrong flavor, next to you who orders the garlic. And the coolest thing about it is we can all eat that ice cream together. And that's exactly what coexistence and interfaith means. It's about having your particular taste buds. And it's all right for you to crave one flavor of ice cream while somebody else craves another. And the other thing, it's really neat to have those flavors change over time. Like as a little kid, I used to like cookies and cream. And then I kind of went into I liked rainbow sherbet for a while. And then I liked my Rocky Road. So over time, that ice cream flavor changes. But the coolest thing about faith is it's the dessert for life. All right, and everybody loves the dessert. So as we go through the service today, whenever you hear that coexistence thing, I want you to just get excited in your head that this is a ticket for ice cream. And that, yeah, we can all eat our ice cream together.
Today, our reading is from anthropologist David R. Smuck, editor of Interfaith Dialogue and Peace Building, now retired from his work with the U.S. Institute of Peace. I strongly feel that it is only when there's a deep understanding of one's own religious beliefs and commitments that progress can be made in achieving true understanding and respect for the religious values and beliefs of others. Engaging in interfaith dialogue does not in any way mean undermining one's own faith or religious tradition. Indeed, interfaith dialogue is constructive only when people become firmly grounded in their own religious traditions. And through that process, they gain a willingness to listen and respect the beliefs of other religions. Many of the traditional approaches to interfaith dialogue have assumed that it can be successful only if agreements are reached about amorphous concepts and themes that various traditions may have in common. These approaches have also assumed that participants have to weaken or compromise elements of their own faith. This is not necessarily constructive for engaging in interfaith understanding and dialogue. It is only when participants have a deep understanding of their own religious traditions and are willing to learn and recognize the richness of other religious traditions, that constructive cooperation can take place between groups from different faiths.
All right. Well, you guys know that when I come here, you've got to do some kind of pre-sermon exercise to get the blood flowing and make sure that you don't fall asleep. So I want everybody to run in place really fast on your chair. Get a good jump on. Really fast. All right, you can start now. Raise your hands way up in the air. Take a deep breath in. And exhale out, put your hands down. All right, thanks for humoring me, you guys. All right, and now we get to jump into the teaching part. We had this conversation earlier with one of our great new members. This is a fellowship, and yeah, it's a lot easier to say fellowship sometimes than a church. And I always find it's a lot easier to say teaching instead of preaching. So yeah, I never like to preach. We'll kind of keep that. That's a scary, big, dirty word. All right, here we go. It was an otherwise average morning with otherwise average weather, and I was voyaging off on an otherwise average walk with my not so average canine companion, Rafiki, the mighty dog, when it happened. Let me backtrack a tiny bit so as to set the stage for you all. Every morning, Rafiki and I venture out into the wild world that is Santa Cruz for a stroll around the block, where we routinely pass by a rather ferocious and furry foe that I have affectionately come to call Jaws, in response to his snarling rows of skin-shearing shiny whites that fill his mouth. Fortunately for us, Jaws, the menacing mutt, spends his days tied to the porch post of our neighbor's house, where his bite is limited to a slightly intimidating, growling bark of which he uses in lieu of a greeting. Needless to say, upon realizing that the tethered pit bull posed no immediate threat to his physical health, my fearless four-legged friend Rafiki has made a tradition out of lifting his leg on the bush in front of Jaws' domain as a means of mocking the monster. Yep, that's right. Day in, day out, my privileged pup pauses to passive-aggressively pee on the neighbor's flowers in blind sight of the snarling beast before continuing to prance proudly down the street with his wagging tail trailing behind. That was until that otherwise average morning several weeks back when our world took a turn for the worst. So back to the present we go. This particular morning, Rafiki, feeling a little extra confident, gave a tug to his leash and spoke up with a slightly less intimidating bark of his own. Less intimidating, however, boastful enough to give Jaws just the extra incentive he needed to break free from captivity and come charging in our direction with the remnants of a chewed-up lead in tote. The event caught both myself and my buddy Rafiki off guard, and in response, I did what any cowardly dog walker would do. I panicked, and I dropped the leash of my 15-pound micro mutt, who proceeded to pounce heroically in the direction of Jaws and his scathing set of, well, jaws. So what did I do next? Well, what any self-respecting doggy daddy would do. I shut my eyes and cringed in anticipation of the funeral and or vet bill of my ferocious friend's funeral. Needless to say, it was what I did not hear next that will stick with me for a lifetime. That's right. Nothing. No barking, no crying, no bone-crunching bites, and when I opened my eyes, I stood in awe of two playful pups now chasing each other's tail in the grass outside my neighbor's house. Yeah, that's right. Jaws had been tamed and was now romping joyfully in circles of glee around my little Rafiki. What happened to the vicious beast that threatened to attack us every morning with snarls and scary-sounding barks, you ask? What happened to the canine Cujo who nearly choked himself whenever we walked by? What happened to Jaws' jaws? Answer? He was unleashed. free to be foe or friend, and thank God he chose the latter. So what's this have to do with a Sunday service on coexistence? Well, everything. We live in a tethered world where growling takes the place of many a greeting, where civilized humans literally and metaphorically bark at one another from a safe distance, snarling and showing their teeth while tethered to preconceived faith traditions, political affiliations, social biases, or any number of freedom-limiting objects or beliefs. Yes, we live in a world of leashes, and it is when we are leashed that we feel the most threatened, and in turn, are the most threatening. You see, coexistence can't happen when the existees do not feel free to share their thoughts and beliefs openly with one another. And it certainly can't happen when individuals feel the need to push their beliefs on one another. It can't happen when those engaged in conversation close them off from new ideas. It can't happen when the fear of speaking up because we are overly concerned with our political correctness or offending the other. In other words, it can't happen when the leashes that restrain us are pulled too tight. Up until that otherwise average morning I'd alluded to earlier, this is exactly what my neighbor and I had done to our poor defenseless dogs. We restrained them, and in turn they acted out. It wasn't until their man-made leashes snapped that their true intention, that of playfulness, came to the forefront. And playfulness, may I add, is the key to coexistence. After all, it's as the late, great Plato once spoke, one learns more through an hour of play than a lifetime of conversation. Coexistence doesn't mean conformity so much as it means community. And in a healthy community, my openly sharing my beliefs doesn't discourage another from sharing theirs. Exactly the opposite. My being proud of who I am and confident in my particular faith tradition invites others to be proud of who they are and confident in their unique faith tradition. Mutually empowering and untethered, you might say. Proselytization, on the other hand, the pushing of one belief on another, is a fear response. It's a reaction to restriction, a lesson in leashes, if you may. This is a natural response when we feel threatened, captive, or questioning. It's comforting to know that others believe the same thing that we believe, to share beliefs, very often because we are uncertain about them on our own. So in turn, we push our beliefs on others. Many of you have heard me speak of coexistence as a metaphorical or literal space where everybody is safe, but no one is comfortable. In other words, coexistence occurs when we create experiences where we grow in community because we take away the comforts and conformities of day-to-day living. In these situations, no one has the hierarchical advantage. But instead, we all must work together to expand our group consciousness, communal existence, and mutual evolution. My favorite of these spaces is on our sailboat, of which we host a weekly spirited sailing Saturday. In these situations, I know that the boat and bay are perfectly safe. I know that everybody on board is perfectly friendly. But it takes everybody out of their comfort zone. They have to intermingle with one another. This is a great place to pause for a quick lesson on the difference between two types of faith. Faith that is in this room, faith that's on the sailboat. So two different types of faith. We have deliberative faith and embedded faith. And to do so, I'd like to expound upon the ancient Swami saying, killing the Buddha. Anybody ever heard of that? Oh, we got one. All right. Killing the Buddha. Yep, that's right. All right, here we go. Story time at UUFSC. So get comfy. Here goes. It was late morning, just before lunch, when one of Lin Chi's monks came running up, half crazed out of his mind in ecstasy, babbling about the Buddha. He said he's seen him. Said he was just walking down the road, minding his business, when all of a sudden, wham, bam, Buddha man. In an instant, enlightenment, nirvana, the big payoff, heaven on earth, Shambhalaya. And in response, the monk can't stop talking about it. He met the Buddha. To which Lin Chi, the devoted teacher, strikes a match, lights his pipe, and takes a long drag, leaving the young monk hanging, waiting for his reward. Instead, Lin Chi calmly blows a cloud of smoke, reaches out, and smacks his student verbally and physically across the face. So you met the Buddha on the road, the Swami says. That's great. Now kill him. Imagine the young monk's face. Better yet, imagine your own. Think about it. You've been to church, you've gone to Kendo, you danced away your bar mitzvah money. You know the lingo and have tried the religion thing a time or two in the past. But now you're an atheist, an agnostic, or an orthodox believer without a care or a cause. Maybe you've tried not to think about the faith and religious thing. You've opted instead for sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You've opted for a career, for kids, for the real world. Maybe you've run away from your family or started a family, or given up on family, God, and the nation as a whole. Then, when you least expected it, when you were doing your own thing and getting on with life, you stumbled upon something. Him, her, a higher power, Buddha, Jesus, the Shiva, Allah, mysterious, tremendous, the great white whale. And even though you were no seeker and you weren't looking, all of a sudden you have to admit, God is great. Allah Akbar, Hare Krishna, bless the Buddha. To which your teacher says, super, you found it. Whatever or whoever that it may be. Now kill it. Why? Because the named and boxed Buddha of your upbringing is not the true Buddha, but an expression of your longing. And until this Buddha is killed, he will only stand in your way. You see, when Lin Chi contributed this idea of deicide, the killing of God or Buddha, to his religion 1,000 years ago, he was talking less about a long foregone teacher, but rather the embedded deity of conformed religion. The Buddha that had been passed down from generation to generation and has led to separation, not the essence of something omnipresent, omniscient, and inexplicable. Killing the Buddha is the end of embedded faith. This is what I was taught in Sunday school kind of faith. To which the Swami instructed his student to ditch the name and follow the feeling, to forgo the Buddha and seek the Brahma, to be deliberative in his faith. Deliberative faith, as opposed to embedded faith, is that moment of enlightenment that the young monk experienced out on the road before ever trying to name it. Often unexpected and almost always undefined, it's faith that requires seeking, faith that cannot be leashed or limited, faith that can teach and catch us off guard when we least expect it. Deliberative faith is the essence of coexistence because it's less about a creed than it is an uncommonly common union. A communion, if you may. And in order to reach a place of community or coexistent community, we have to learn to rely less on words and more on feelings. We have to kill the Buddha. And thus the story continues. Go back to your dormitory, insists Lin Chi, and gather all the religious books that you can. The Bibles, the Qurans, the Tao Te Chings, and Torahs. Gather them all, study them, read them, recite them, and then burn them. Whoa, Lin, you might say, that sounds pretty sacrilegious. And you may be right. But it is what Lin Chi instructs the young monk to do next that defines deliberative faith. Burn them so that you may write your own. Moving from embedded to deliberative faith is a crucial step in coexistence because it is not until we ditch the names, terminology, and blindly accepted theology of confirmed society that we are able to focus on experience. And it is through transcendence that that ineffable experience on the road comes to us and we truly find unity. The Unitarian minister and transcendental author Ralph Waldo Emerson said it well when laying out his fundamental laws of the Spirit. The world is not of manifold power, but of one will and of one mind. For God is unity, but always works in variety. In other words, think of coexistent human beings as a bouquet of many flowers, beautiful because of, not in spite of, our diversity. Yes, God is unity, but always works in variety. There's a word in South Africa, Ubuntu, a word that captures both Emerson and Mandela's greatest gift, their recognition that we are all bound together in ways that are invisible to the human eye. That there is a oneness to humanity that we achieve ourselves by sharing ourselves with others and caring for those around us. Ubuntu is the essence of coexistence, as is its direct translation. I am me because you are you. The Quran states a similar truth to that of Emerson and the South Africans. And for those of you who were paying attention during the chalice lighting, this will be familiar. Unto every one of you we have been given a different law and a way of life. For if God had so willed, he could have made us all one single conformity. Instead, we are one in spirit, a community, cooperating in matters of righteousness and piety. So at this point, we have the Transcendentalists, the South Africans, the Buddhists, and the Muslims all sharing a coexistent theology. So why not add in the crazy Christians as well? We are quickly approaching the holiday of Pentecost in the Christian church, which takes place on May 19th this year. Pentecost is the day recounted in the second chapter of the book of Acts, when all the tribes that were separated during the Torah's Tower of Babel episode were gathered together as one, but speaking different languages. That was until all of a sudden the Holy Spirit entered the scene in the form of tongues of fire. I'll let you decide whether you want to take that literal or metaphorical, but yeah, these tongues of fire come down to these people all gathered as one, speaking different languages. And it made it so that all the people could understand one another. Needless to say, the experience caught the crowd off guard. However, what was even more unique was that though they each heard each other in their own tongue, they each continued to speak different languages. What was happening, the onlookers asked. It was the essence of coexistence. You see, whereas the tribes might not have been unified in word, they were unified in excitement. And excitement is a universal language. It's that same excitement that blindsided that young yogi on the road when he found the Buddha. The same excitement that hits you during a perfect sunset, a child or grandchild's birth, the first kiss of a soulmate, an awesome Rev Ryan sermon, or any transcendental experience that makes you realize that this life has so much more. And that so much more is much more than we could ever name or claim. So kill the Buddha, unleash the hounds, and break free from the shackles of embedded or segregated faith, my friends. And most importantly, get excited. Because excitement is the language of coexistence. So I'll leave you with that and have fun eating your ice cream this afternoon.